Hi, community scholars. It's Shawntae, your college success coach. As you guys know, I wanted to start doing some webinar sessions for you guys, just about different academic skills that I think will be really useful for you guys. So everybody's been in school. We're a little over halfway through the semester now, so you're probably starting to notice that so the way that you may have taken notes or studied in high school might not work in college. So I'm going to kind of just give a quick overview of note-taking and study skills, and I'm going to show you guys how you can continue to work on these skills and help you connect with resources on your college campus to help you continue to hone these skills. So this is our first webinar style workshop, so I hope lots of you can watch this, and as always, if you have any questions afterwards, call, text, email, whatever you need to do. So this is note-taking and study skills. By the end of this workshop, I'm hoping that all of you will be able to explain why note-taking is important. I know a lot of students, we don't take notes. You sit in class and you listen to your professor talk, or you're reading a textbook for class and you don't write anything down. And I've been there. You've probably been there. Lots of students have been there. So I want everyone to, at least if nothing else, understand why writing things down in class is important. And not only that, but be able to identify one note-taking technique that you want to start using. So these techniques aren't for everyone. You're probably not going to use one technique exactly the way it's written and the way I explain it, but hopefully you'll be able to find little pieces of different techniques that work with your learning style. Also, figuring out what tools do you need. So tools, these can be physical things. It can be pens, pencils, paper. They can be resources, writing centers, math labs. It can be people, other resources that can help you with your study habits. And I want everyone to be able to identify one study habit related goal. So it could be, that you're going to go to the library once a week, or you're going to go to the writing center, something to help you with your studying. And then we'll talk individually about those goals later on. So note taking, let's get started. What is note taking? So note taking, in its very simplest form, consists of pretty much summarizing. So you are going to be trying to identify main points, defining keywords, and summarizing the material. So this will come up again and again throughout this workshop, and people take notes for a variety of reasons. So I think that when we talk about taking notes in college, we most commonly think of students sitting in a lecture hall with a professor in the front of the class. Everybody's taking notes, writing things down, and then you ideally study off of those notes later. I think it's important to note that taking notes doesn't go away. Later on, towards the end of the note-taking session, middle of this workshop, I'll show you some actual notes from my notebook that I took in a meeting. So it has nothing to do with school. I was in a meeting for work and I had to take notes. And you guys will probably find that you will have to take notes too throughout through your career, or you might even be noticing that now in meetings through campus clubs and stuff. So getting good at note taking is important regardless of school, but especially while you're in school. And also, don't forget that when you're doing reading for classes and you're doing research and you're reading articles and textbooks and watching videos for school, take notes off of those as well. So, and these three main points that I've mentioned about note taking will come up there too. So if you're reading blocks of text in a textbook, you don't want to have to write down every single thing. You want to find the main points. You want to find keywords and you want to summarize what you've read, or if you're listening to a lecture, summarize what you've heard. There's a few different ways to figure out what those important points are. If it's during a lecture, you'll start to get a feel for your professor and you'll kind of know, like, this is this is important. I need to start listening to this, or I need to, or he'll write something on the board or on sorry about that. He'll write something on the board and you'll realize, like, oh, I need to write that down. And same thing with keywords, and summarizing is just the way that you hear it, right? So that is that. So Benefits of note taking. There's lots. First of all, uh, just learning this skill is important in life. But the note taking by itself, it increases your focus. So if you have a class that's an hour or 15 minutes long, you have a class that's 3 hours long, you're in a long meeting, it can get a little easy to kind of zone out. So if you're actively listening and writing things down, it helps you stay focused. It can improve your attention to detail. You notice when you've missed something, and when you're writing things down, and you can turn around and ask, ask questions later on. You'll be the person that remembered what you talked about in the meetings. You can just quickly flip through your notes. I know for me, a lot of times, just the simple act of writing something down helps me remember it, even if I don't go back and look at it later. It extends your attention span, makes it a little bit easier to pay attention for a long time, and it promotes active learning. And I think that's something we don't talk about as much for note taking. But it's a lot easier to be engaged with what your professor is saying if you've written things down. If your instructor says something early on in the lecture, and then she or he refers to it later on, then you can flip back through your notes, and you'll be able to interact with that professor in a way that a student that hasn't done that might be able to. So I think that's really valuable. So still not sold, still don't quite like this idea. I know a lot of us, we didn't have to take notes in high school to get by and do well. So this can be a change from the way that you've always studied. But what truly can happen if you don't take notes? What I always ask students is how are you logically going to remember what your professor said a week later or a month later until your next exam? Some instructors and professors are good about giving study guides, putting their PowerPoints on Blackboard or Canvas. But what if they're not? What if you have a professor that doesn't do any of those things and truly is relying on you to write down what they're saying in lecture and be able to present that information in your own words later on? And if you have a class where your entire grade is comprised of exams and projects, you'll need to know that information. And this comes up in every subject, but it's important to know. So what will this look like for you? This note-taking and these workshops, while important, are kind of difficult to do for a large group because it's so individualized. So what will note-taking look like for you? I know what it looks like for me. I'll talk a little bit about my experiences, but it really will depend a lot on your own personal strengths and weaknesses. So if you know that you are a very visual person, you might want your notes to look like the notes in the image that I've chosen for this slide. You might want to use a lot of different colored markers and pens and highlighters. You might want your notes to be really bright. You might want to use flashcards. So, think about those things. If you are more of a auditory person and you need to hear something, you might consider getting a tape recorder and asking your instructor if you can record their lectures, and then maybe you'll go back and listen to them or write down from the tape later. This can look all kinds of different ways. Just your own personal preference. If you do not want to have all the markers and all that stuff, then don't do that. Just because that works for me or this works for the person that created this image on this slide, that might not work for you. If you just need a pencil and a piece of paper, then fine. If you prefer to take notes on a computer, a lot of students are doing that now. For me personally, the technology is too much of a distraction. But if that works for you, if you can have your note page up and you can type and take notes and not be too distracted by the internet and everything else that goes along with it, by all means, please use your computer. But really think about that. Like, is this the best option for me? Because sometimes it's not. And if you find that you're not really actually taking notes on the computer, you might want to think of something else. I'm really prone to doodling on my paper, and you'll see when I show you guys my notes in a little bit. So maybe I should try the computer, because sometimes there have been times where I've left a class or a meeting and I've just drawn all over my paper and I didn't write anything useful. So over the years, I've gotten a lot better at this. Don't do this quite as much, but it happens, and it'll happen to you. So you just have to kind of experiment with different note-taking styles and just find something that works really well for you. Supplies are something to consider. What do you have access to? If you have a laptop that you already take everywhere, maybe you want to use it. If you love going school supply shopping like I do, you might want to, buy all the highlighters and markers. So just make it fun for yourself. For me, the act of going like school shopping and buying new notebooks and folders and organizing everything to take my notes, that helps me kind of get in the swing of things. And if that works for you, then please. Note taking can only be so fun. Should have probably put fun in quotes because it's not that fun, but you can make the best of it since it's something that we all kind of have to do. So just really think about what works best for you and what works best for your personal organization system and your learning style. Think about if you learn better from seeing or hearing. And if you're a visual person, think about what that means. And I have more resources for individual learning styles that I will send out to everyone so we can start kind of thinking about that for each of you individually. So I'm going to quickly go over 3 types of note-taking techniques. So I think this image is kind of funny that's on this slide because I've taken notes that way before. I was recently at a conference and I didn't want to miss the conversation that was happening in the room because I was too busy copying down what was on the PowerPoint and what everyone was saying. So every time the slide changed, I snapped a picture of the PowerPoint slide, and that's kind of what this picture here is showing. But yeah, so whatever works. So these note-taking techniques I'm going to talk about are more or less for if you're taking notes by hand, but there are ways to adapt these for if you're taking notes by computer. And I'd be more than happy to talk about that with anybody that is interested. So the three methods that I'm going to talk about, one is called the Cornell, one is called mapping, and one is called charting. So the Cornell method of note-taking, some of you may be familiar with this. It is the most common, I would say, and it's interesting because you wouldn't necessarily, like if you see this style of note-taking, you might not know it has a name. So you'll see a little bit of this on my own notes that I'll show you after I'm done going through all of this. But it looks a little formal, but I like it because it really focuses on finding the main ideas and summarizing. And that's, if you remember from like the first-ish slide about when I started here talking about what the points of note-taking are, and those identifying the main idea, defining keywords, and summarizing the main points. So this pretty much nails all of those. So what you'll do is on the right-hand side of your page is where you actually take your notes. So that's what you're writing down, what your textbook says, what your instructor says. And then on the left side there, so I usually do this when I use this style of note-taking. And I guess it's important to note that when I use this style, I'm not consciously doing it. I don't think, okay, now I'm going to use the Cornell style of note-taking. It doesn't really work that way, but it ends up happening because it's effective. So I'll write my notes on the right side of the page, and usually on the margin on the left side, I'll go backward, like after the professor is done talking or someone in a meeting is done talking, and I start making bullet points of the important things. And I like this style because sometimes you don't know what the important stuff is in the beginning. So your instructor might be talking and you're just writing down thoughts and words and phrases that they're saying, and then after they've been talking for a few minutes, you start to realize what's important. So you want to make sure that when you go back and look at your notes, the stuff that is the most important is what is standing out in your notes. So you've got all the stuff there on the right where you're just kind of writing, and then as the things that are coming up or you realize are important, note them to the side. Sometimes I don't always pull them out and write on the side. Sometimes I highlight or circle or draw a big star, a giant star, or an exclamation mark, but something in your notes so you know, okay, this idea is something I need to come back to while I'm studying later, which we'll talk about. Come back to this idea. And any questions that you have. So if your instructor says something and you're like, what's that mean? Or something you need to look up in a book later, I also write down if the instructor suggests anything to help us understand. So if they say, "Oh, use this," this author says this, this, and that, or this video, this, and that. I write those things down too. I don't always get it. You don't always get a chance to look those things back up, but it's good to, if your instructor is telling you something's important, it is probably important. So write it down, listen, look it up later. Yeah. So at the bottom there, you write a summary of what was said in your own words. And this is important because when you use your notes later to study or to use to write a paper, an essay, work on an exam, you need to be able to put these ideas in your own words. And it also makes it easier for you to understand what was said. If you could somehow connect it to something else that you've learned in another class or something that's happening in life. So just try, and this would be probably later, maybe after class, when you're going and reviewing your notes. So Cornell style, definitely the most common style of notes. So moving on, the mapping method. So this one looks a little strange. I actually do use this, not usually on purpose either, but it's very much for visual learners. So you kind of, instead of having bullet points and lists and headings and outlines and all that stuff, you're kind of showing how different ideas are related to each other. And it's really easy here to identify the main points because they're in the bubbles. But one of the problems with this style of note taking is that you kind of have to know what the main points are ahead of time. So this happens, right, in class. Like your professor may say, today we're going to talk about, insert main idea here, and parts of this are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So once you hear that, you can assume, okay, there's probably going to be some stuff said about these 4 ideas. So you can start setting up your map right away, and then putting those ideas in the bubbles and then kind of branching out from there. So this can be difficult if you don't know ahead of time, which is why I said I often use this on accident. So I might start using a different style of note taking, and then once I realize that this might be more effective, then I kind of transition into a map. So sometimes I'll just circle the words on my notes on my chart and then begin to map from there, because for me, I am very visual. So this is helpful, but you don't know ahead of time that you need to use this. But there might be times, and the same can kind of be said for the charting method. So you might not always know ahead of time that a chart is useful, and it's really for specific types of courses. So something where you might need to know facts, or you need to see how 2 different facts or people or places or events compare to each other. So if you're in a class like history or geography, you'll kind of know that you can use this. There might be times where your instructor gives you a chart like this. So it's helpful, but for really specific kinds of classes. But you can probably, looking at this chart, see why this information might be easier presented in this fashion rather than on bullet points. Like for me, this is really easy. I can see. So if I had a question and they asked me to compare Jean Piaget and Erik Erikson, I can picture this chart in my head, instead of if I had just bullet points of text about both of them. Like that could get a little messy. But here on this chart, it makes all of this information look very manageable. But for other styles of note taking, for other classes, this might not make sense. It could be too big and too messy. So. All right, so those were three style of note taking. After this slide, I think it's the next slide, I'll show you some of my notes and I'll kind of point out where I use different where I use different note taking methods there. Oh no, where did I go? All right, cool. Yep. So just a little bit of a review. If you take anything away from this, remember that it is that we're trying to identify main points and summarizing material. Experiment with different styles of note taking. So if we were doing this workshop in person, I would have shown you little videos and I would have asked you to practice, and then we would have talked about how you felt about each style of note taking. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work so well in this webinar style, where we're not actually together. You're just watching me later in the future, watching this video. So I'm going to send you guys some handouts for each of these, but it's not quite the same. So, you know, you guys are in some ways on your own until you get connected with your like success centers on each of your campuses, which you have, and I have the information for you. But they can help you in person, which will be really helpful. And of course, when I meet with all of you, you know, this is something that we'll talk about. So I might ask you for an upcoming meeting to bring one of your notebooks from class, and we'll kind of look and see, well, how are you taking notes? You know, bring your textbooks. How are you taking notes from your textbook? How are you taking notes from lectures? You know, all of that stuff. It's important to notice that the way you take notes for a math class might not be the same that you take notes for an English class. You know, that could look completely different depending on your class, depending on your experience level at school. It could also change depending on your professor's style. So if you have an instructor who writes a lot on the dry erase board in the classroom, it'll probably be a little easier for you to take notes because they're kind of going to tell you what's important. If you have a professor that uploads PowerPoints to Blackboard or Canvas, you know, maybe you can print those before class and take notes right on the PowerPoint note, so, or on the PowerPoint page. So depending on how your professor teaches, their instructional style, that could alter your note taking. So your note taking might look different from class to class, from year to year. So that's why it's really important to kind of experiment with some different styles and different resources so that you can adapt to each class. Stay caught up. It can be really easy to get behind, and especially if you're missing class, if you have a lot of absences, you're missing all of those notes. So also, you know, think of your friends and classmates when you're taking notes, because if someone else is absent and they ask you, you know, hey Shawntae, can I get those notes for history class? If you don't take very good notes, you're not going to be able to help them. And I'm sure that you would also want someone to be able to help you, because you miss a lot from not being there to take notes. And as I've mentioned a few times, note taking, not just for lectures, you can use note taking in meetings. You can and should use note taking while reading in textbooks, reading articles, watching videos for class, all of that stuff. And something to make note taking a little easier, come up with some sort of abbreviation system for yourself. More often than not, you will not be able to write as fast as your instructor talks, and you shouldn't be writing every word down anyways, just as, you know, the main points of the conversation. But I know sometimes we get caught up on that. So here's a little list of abbreviations here that can be helpful, but you know, you can come up with your own system. I use some of these. I use some things that I don't know if anybody else but me would know what they meant if they saw them, but you know, absolutely use some of this stuff. So here are my notes. My handwriting is not super great, but on the page, on the little picture on the left there, right above my head, you can see that I have a little bit of a web going on there. I started taking notes and realized that I needed to change my format there because we kind of started with this main idea. We were actually talking about offices in this on campus. So we start talking about one office, and then we start talking about the other offices that are a part of that office, and then what all those offices do. And I thought this is a situation where mapping is perfect. So of course I didn't think that in those words, but I realized as I was writing. So you can see kind of like the little arrows going around and the circles, and then the bullet points off of that. The picture on the right is a much more Cornell style, so not perfect. I mean, I'm not using a chart or anything, but you can kind of see where I'm just writing, and then on the left, and in those little boxes, I'm trying to signify where there's main points. So I was in a meeting. I don't remember exactly this meeting because you could see some of these notes are from the summertime. But I am realizing that as I'm taking notes that some of the stuff I was writing was not the important stuff. And I needed to, when I go back and look at this later, or when I went back and looked at this later, being able to see, what was the important stuff. You don't want your important stuff mixed up with the non-important stuff. But unfortunately, sometimes in the beginning, you don't know which is which. So once you figure that out, make sure that however works for you, that you're signifying that. So those are my notes. All right, briefly moving into study skills. This is also difficult to do for a group because everyone is so different. So we'll do our best we can. This picture was hilarious because I think that is all of us. It's probably been you this semester. I know it's been me. I have gotten a lot better at this, and you guys all will too. So, but yeah, so studying, the act of texting, eating, and watching TV with an open textbook nearby, right? But none of you guys are doing that because I'm sure you guys are all rock stars at studying. But what studying actually is going back and reviewing your notes, reviewing textbook, any materials that you've been given, and trying to absorb and understand and make sense of the information. So studying is important, and I'm sure you guys hear this all the time. So I'm not gonna go through this too much because I want to talk to you all individually about this, but I just want you guys to all kind of have a basis of information before we have those individual conversations. But study space is so important. I know some of you guys are living in dorms and on campus, or you're living at home with parents and families, and with significant others, and it can just be really difficult to find a space that's okay to study in. And your ideal space might not be a space that's accessible to you. So maybe you like going to the library, but you don't have a car and you can't get there, or you work when it's open and then it's closed when you need to go. Maybe you like studying in your room, but your roommate is loud or has people over, and that's not possible. So, just thinking about what you need, like, do you need quiet? Do you need, no, like background noise? Do you need headphones? Do you need the TV on in the back room? Do you need soft, quiet music? Do you need to be outside, inside? It's a little cold now, so I prefer to study outside, but maybe not now. Um, but just thinking of what options you have, and thinking of the pros and cons for you. So I personally, I cannot study with other people or in the presence of other people. I pretty much have to be alone. And so but a lot of people like to study in groups and in pairs. So if that is you, think like, do the benefits outweigh the costs? So if you study well with people and it's helpful and you're being productive, then rock on. But if you like to study with people and then you realize that you aren't getting very much stuff done, then you might need to rethink, or kind of change up the time. Maybe part of the time you study with people and part of the time you study alone. So on that note, time. So what time of day works best for you to study? Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? What blocks of time do you have available in your schedule to study? And then actually plan for that time. I think we all assume that we're going to have time to study, but what usually ends up happening is that, of course, we procrastinate, right? So we procrastinate, and then we're always just doing whatever needs to be done the soonest. So instead of planning out our studying, we are just, cramming and scrambling for the next exam or the next test or the next paper. So figuring out what time of day you're going to study, putting it on your calendar, in your planner, on your phone, getting that figured out, figuring out how long you're going to study. Do you need to study for an hour and then take a break? Do you need to study for 4 hours straight? Sometimes it takes me a while to get started. So I know that when I'm setting time aside, if I only set aside an hour, it's going to probably take me 15 minutes to get started. So that might not work. I need long blocks of time. So, but sometimes you've got to cram studying in where you can. So just figuring out where you're going to be, when you're going to do this, how frequently you're going to study. Do you need, for most of us, we need to plan for study time every day, but that's not always realistic. So, looking at your schedule and finding out what you can realistically do, and then going from there. And then also planning ahead. Like I said, we tend to procrastinate. All of us do that. And, just figuring, looking ahead in your syllabus for your class, your classes, and figuring out what is coming up that I need to start studying for now, is really important. So your note-taking and studying toolbox. These are, just all of the tools and resources that you have at your disposal to be successful in school. So, when we're thinking about this, and this is one of the main reasons why I'm here to help you, is to help you figure out what you already have access to and to help you acquire what you need. So when we talk about tools in your toolbox, what supplies do you need? We kind of talked about this for note taking, but do you need paper, pens, a computer, a tape recorder? Do you need to print out PowerPoints ahead of time? Do you need headphones because you're going to listen to music while you study? I use like all kinds of like fiddle things to keep my hands busy because otherwise I can't concentrate. So I just have a whole mess of things next to my desk that keep my hands busy because otherwise I just get really distracted. So maybe you have some of those types of things. What technology are you using? Are you using apps on your phone to help you with studying? Sometimes I listen to Pandora, a classical studying station I found. There are different apps to help you stay organized. Canvas and Blackboard both have apps that you can use to access online assignments. So, which technology do you need? Do you have it? Do you know how to use it? Do you need help? If you do, call me. We'll get it figured out. Okay, resources. So these are places that can help you, basically. So each of your campuses has some office that can help students with study skills. Academic success center type place, tutoring places. So tutoring and study skills are a little different, but a lot of your schools put those resources in the same office. So in our newsletter, I've put links to all of those offices on each of your campuses in the newsletter. So you can find your school, click on your link. If you aren't already familiar with that office, then let me know if you need help getting connected. I've talked to people, I believe, in each of those offices on all of your campuses. So I know people there. I know what they do. I'm more than happy to help get you connected with those spaces. A lot of those offices do workshops on study skills, organizational systems, note taking, all of this stuff, but be much more personalized for you. So that's really helpful. What else? Oh, people. And so people. So me, of course, right? Uh-oh. Whoops. When you sit still for too long, the lights in my office turn off. So you have me, of course, right? You have your instructors that can help you figure out how to best study. Another thing that's in the October newsletter is talking about communicating with your professors. So of course, sometimes there are a variety of things you can connect with your professors about. But one thing that's always worth it to ask them is like, how should I be studying for your class? And they can often tell you those things. So that way you don't have to do a lot of guesswork. You just ask them, and they know. A lot of instructors have what they call supplemental instructors for the class. So they're usually older students that have taken the class before, and they hold study sessions. So, go to those. Go find tutoring sessions that can help you study. Math labs, writing centers, disability resource centers. There's all kinds of offices on campus that can help with these, help you with note taking and studying. And of course, just reminding me. So this is definitely something that I know a lot about and have done a lot of for myself and working with students. So I'd be more than happy to help all of you further develop your note taking and study plans. So that is it. I almost made it before the lights turned off. So thank you so much for watching this. Like I said, this is just kind of give you guys like a foundation of information about this, and we'll build on this as we go. I wanted to do this workshop earlier, but it can be really difficult for new students to really be able to actually absorb this information when they haven't been exposed to this in the classroom yet. So now that you guys have been in the classroom, in a college classroom for a while, you're starting to get a feel for what note taking looks like, how you're studying. So now I think we can have a lot more productive conversations about your study habits, and how you're studying, and how what you're doing during study sessions, with people by yourself, is contributing to the grades that that you may have, or the grades that you want. So, we'll have a lot of really good conversations from this. If you have any questions, of course, you guys do a really good job of contacting me, but please continue to contact me. So you obviously can't click on these links really because they're just an image in the video, but in every newsletter is this banner with all my social media sites are there, and they're clickable. So please do that. I think some of you already follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. We have a Facebook group that's just for scholars. So if there's any parents or community members watching, we do want to keep that group just kind of private for us to kind of chat with and share struggles and successes and resources and all that stuff. But all the other social media items there are public and open for everyone, except for just the Facebook page. And of course, if you guys know how to call and text and email me. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you have any suggestions for the next Community Scholars Workshop, please let me know. I have a list, but I would love to hear from you too. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great night. Bye-bye.